Hey, what's going on there once? Yasso here. This past weekend, I got the opportunity to go and fish a lake called Clearwater. This was a lake located in Annadale, Minnesota. So, um, I kind of want to talk about my process of what I did for pre-fishing and how I approached the tournament. So, this was a really small tournament hosted by some of my friends, and kind of like bragging rights, right? What we did was we launched from this down here, right? So we launched from this down here, but the first thing I did before pre-fishing was, I pulled this up from Navionics, right? And, right when you zoom in, right away I could see a lot of dark spots around here, right? You see this, you see these, and these are ledges. It means that there's drop-offs, right? And there's actually a lot of structure, a lot of points, some underwater structure here, some up here, and it's pretty crazy all around here, right? And that these yellow spots are kind of like islands, or, they're land, basically. So what I did right after looking at this map right here was I went onto Google Earth. And this is the Google Earth of the Clearwater, right? So we launch from over here, and from over here, you can kind of see where these points are. Like right away, you can see this kind of greenish uh, point going out here. So if I go into Navionics, right, this chart here, I can see the point right here, of how shallow it is and how it's moving there, right? For example, this right here, you can see that right up here on Google Earth. And yeah, so that's basically what I did going into pre-fishing. The next thing I tend to look for is the weather, right? So, for example, the tournament date that we fished was the 13th, right? So, right away, of course, this is looking at the historical because, all of these weather has already passed, right? Because today's the 15th of August 2022. And, of course, I'm talking about this here, right? So my pre-fishing day was on the 9th. So on the 9th, right when were looking at the week, I could tell that it's gonna rain on Friday. Uh, so that makes me assume that Saturday there's gonna be an overcast, right? What's also very interesting about the rain here is that it doesn't have it on here, but the wind direction was SSE, right? So it's coming from southeast. What that tells me is that there's going to be wind going this direction, right? So that's going to put a lot of vegetation, I mean, not vegetation, but a lot of food, a lot of bait. It's going to move in this direction up here, right? So that tells me these are some areas that I need to check out. Okay, so that's basically, the homework before the actual pre-fishing. Now, pre-fishing wise, right away, how I wanted to approach this was we launch here. We're gonna hit this point, right? We're gonna hit this point. The reason we're hitting that point is on the day we're fishing, the wind was coming from, I believe, northeast, or sorry, it was northwest. So it was coming this way, right? What I wanted to do was I wanted to check and see if there's bait fish around this area. I wanted to check the inside of the this point right here. I kind of call this like an inner point. Um, Basically, it's I see it as an area where, if it gets too sunny out there, bass might go in here just for a more protective cover. It's not really a cover, but a more protective structure. But if they're feeding, they're probably going to be out here, right? So basically, I was trying to pre-fish this. I checked the inside. I checked this over here. I wanted to check the how far it is from that point to this point, because this in the middle right here could be a potential fishing area too. And basically, right away when we were casting here, when we were pre-fishing, after we saw bait fish, we caught about 3 fish. They're not bass; they were 2 pikes and a walleye, right? So we know that there's fish there. So instead, right away, we went inside. We started coning it, basically with a down imager, trying to check and see what's in that area right there. I checked this side too. I wasn't a fan of it. So after pre-fishing that section right there, we went on to this right here. We checked that, checked this too. Not really much of a fan of it. Again, the wind was coming from this direction, so I was assuming that there was going to be fish around these spots right here, right? Just because the wind is pushing the water right against that, right? So it's pushing baits to areas where bass could ambush them in. I wasn't able to find fish around that area. However, when I moved down here to this point right here, we found some fish right there. Although they weren't like quality fish down here, but we were able to catch three right away, and that's kind of my rule of thumb, right? When I'm chasing after school or I'm trying to check and see if there's a good population of bass in the area, I tend to like to catch three, and then I'm gonna start like coning the area to see what it looks like, right? So after that, we went and checked this hump right here. There wasn't really much to look at right there, and then after that, like for example, on Navionics right here, we see the gap right here on this, right? But what was very interesting was when you look at Google Map right here, right? You see this path right here. So because the wind was coming from, I believe, this direction, right? And then right here, like we were feeling the wind, all right, because we were actually stationed down here. We stationed here. I was casting to about this spot and this spot right here, and then we also stationed this side to cast. We also stationed over here to pretty much cast this area and this area here too, just to check out different sides of it, just in case the bass are stationed a little differently, right? So right away in this spot right here, we caught a solid amount of bass. Three bass, but they were more decent size, right? So I liked it what I was seeing. Again, on the day of, because the wind was blowing like this, we saw baitfish stationed over there. Occasionally, you'll see some over here, but I think what the bass was doing was when the baitfish crossed, they were ambushing the baitfish around that area, right? So that's my theory on how the fish was stationing on that day. And then right after that, we moved into this spot right here, right? So what I was kind of aiming for was basically sections kind of like there's this, right? And there's like a side right here, and then there's just a little gap right here, right? Kind of like a tunnel, underwater tunnel, or a travel path, and then there's a point around it, right? So that's why I was checking this over here, check that, check that. That's what led me to check this spot in the first place, and we found fish in this spot and this spot. And then right after that, seeing this over here, there was this and this, right? So we hit that right away to try to check and see what the fish were doing there. And we caught three fish there right away, right? So that tells me that spots like uh, this, and potentially this. We didn't find fish over here, but potentially there could be fish there, right? Maybe we were just in the wrong place, wrong time, right? But we have fish here, we found fish here, and we found fish there. So that tells me that points were holding fish, and the area is kind of like this, right? Where there's like that slightly shallow path right here from them to kind of come in and ambush fish there. And over here, it was kind of the same too. This actually kind of came out a little bit further to closer to this right here, and then actually the path kind of comes like this, right? The water, right? The water ledge comes like that, and this actually extends over a little bit more. These are kind of underwater, so you can't really see that. So we were fishing those spots there. So since we found fish there, those gave me solid spots to potentially fish on the day of. Now, again, like I was saying earlier, I was a little worried because on that Friday, the wind was coming from south SSE, right? South-southeast, right? So kind of in this direction. So I was worried about this section up here, especially the shallow area. Especially with the rain, it's going to cool off the water temperature. And again, the day I pre-fished, the water temperature was 76 and a half. I'll talk about the day of the actual tournament, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But trying all these right here, I also went and checked out this point right here, or that little point in that little hump, just because again, the day we pre-fish it, the wind was coming this direction, right? So it made sense for us to try it. I checked that. I didn't get too much luck there. We checked this area out. Also didn't see a lot of bait fish. So after that, what we did was we went up north to try to check out the shallow areas up here, right? And just basically just to have an idea of the potential, the fish in that area, right? The population, to see if there's enough big fish right here, so that if we do fish the day of the tournament, and let's say the wind did blow up a lot of the baits, a lot of the bait fish shallow, I kind of want to have an idea of how big the bass is around these areas, right? So we went and fished shallow. we found a couple like 3 pounders in these areas right here. My problem with it was that they were very sparse. They were really spread out. You know, it's not like a school fish, right? So if you catch school fish, if you're chasing school fish, once you're on a fish within that school, as long as you don't spook that school, you're gonna probably catch like 3 or 4 fish out of that school, sometimes even more. All right, so that led me to be like, okay, maybe these area isn't much of a space for me to fish, just because like, you know, it's a lot of you're going into like, vegetation, you're pitching lily pads and cattails and stuff like that, and the thing is that the fish was just too spread out. So when I approached this tournament, my my original plan was these down here, right, and then maybe up here. But on the day of the tournament, the wind was actually blowing kind of pretty much the same. It was the same type of wind that we were fishing during the pre-fish. So it's coming from this direction, right? So what I did was, we launched from here. We went here. I wanted to check out at least this side of it, right? So we checked that out. Again, we caught no fish right there. We moved all the way to this section right here, and this right here. We caught I think 3 fish right there right away. Three pretty decent sized bass, and then we caught a northern pike. We checked this area. We caught about another 3 fish there. We were able to limit, and then we went over here, caught some fish over here. All right, and then again the wind was blowing this direction. Okay, so it was hitting upon this entire area, right? So of course we were fishing this entire area right here, but the day of, fish were stationed here and down here. So after we pretty much caught our 3 to 4 fish here, we went back over here, and then we went back here, and then at the end we went over here to try to see if we could upgrade. And this was where we actually caught a lot of our big fish. Okay, or we were able to cull our fish. So what was happening was, this bend right here, the bass was stationed on this hump over here. All right. We tried fishing over here at first, but we weren't catching anything. But then what happened was we were right here. We're casting to that hump right here. Okay. And we found bass right here. It was feeding on bluegills. There was a bunch of bluegills in that area, or a bunch of baitfish in that area. They were biting. They were coming up and catching that fish, right? So I kind of want to talk about like the structure of the lake, right? So at Clearwater, it's kind of like this, right? So this brown is kind of like let's say the land under, okay? So these are like the vegetations, all right? So ignore my drawings horrible right there, right? So vegetation, there's cattails, lily pads, and stuff like that, right? And then these are kind of like the weeds, okay? And let me kind of draw the water line. So let's say this was the water line. Oh, that's a pretty ugly water line. Yeah, then let's just use this right here. Okay, so that was the water line, and there's the weeds right here. And what happened is this was about 5 feet. Okay, so right here was about 5 feet. Okay, and let me kind of do that. And let's say that this right here was roughly 15 feet. Okay, and right at 15 feet, what was happening was, so these right here are dead. I'm going to use yellow with, oh, come on. Let's do a brush. I'm going to maybe use orange. So these are kind of like dead weeds, right? Or they're not like healthy weeds. They're like the yellowish, orange, not green weeds, right? But what was happening down here was, right around 15 feet here, there were some really, really healthy weeds down here, right? And they actually came up. So the ground's about 15 feet, right? That's the bottom, right? So the weeds was growing up about 10 feet. It was about 5 feet under the water surface, right? And what happened was the bass was right around this area right here to, somewhere around here, basically feeding on the bluegills that kind of came in. And what we were doing was, let's say this was the boat. put it as purple. This was us over here, all right, and this is actually down here is actually like 20 something feet. So we were actually stationed about like at 25 feet of water, right? So we were stationed at 25 feet of water. Let's say this is the boat, and we were actually casting. We're casting to about 15 feet of water. All right, so we were cranking. We were able to bounce our crank on top of like the weeds right here, right? And basically that was how we were catching fish. And then towards the midday, once they got slower, we were pretty much just casting Texas rig crawls into these areas, and that's how we were catching them. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to do was I wanted to share how we approached them, what we did to catch them, and why we were fishing the areas that we fish, right? And again, this is a summer pattern, summer almost fall pattern. So we a lot of the fish that we caught had a big belly, so it's telling us that they're feeding, right? Um, in my opinion, they're already feeding. I wouldn't be surprised if the fall pattern starts early this year. Um, yeah, the fall feeding, heavy feeding, I think that's gonna happen soon. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what I'm seeing here off of fishing Clearwater. We didn't get the chance to fish this side of that, so basically we're in the main lake, this area here, and we did some pre-fishing up here. However, again, we chose to go with the strategy of fishing down here, right? Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I got for today. I think I did pretty well at the tournament. Um, yeah, all right. So if you have any questions, put that in the comments below. And I know this is a very long video, trying to break down what I did during my pre-fishing, what I did during the tournament, how I caught them, and what the water looked like, right? And again, this looks kind of not the greatest drawing, but the idea is over here. That's a cattail. Um, oh yeah, so here's another thing too, right? This drop right here, right? That's basically almost everywhere on Clearwater, right? There's a couple of areas where it drops in more of a decline manner, right? But majority of the structure there was a ledge. So I thought that was pretty interesting because this is my first time fishing at Clearwater, and normally most lakes you want to look for ledges, but in areas where if a ledge is everywhere, um, typically you want to look for something a little different, and we found that little difference, and we were fishing that. So yeah, that's all I got. Hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.